Good Thursday morning, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for January the 26th. Today, we are reading together from Genesis chapter 31, where we are going to see the great escape of Jacob and his family from the house of Laban. And then we're going to see where things get a little hairy there for a bit, where Laban catches up, overtakes Jacob. Jacob stands his ground, and Laban ends up folding. Let's read about that here in Genesis chapter 31. Again, we're at this point because Jacob has been working for his father-in-law slash slave master slash oppressive boss for around 20 years at this point. And it's time for him to go. He has a family now. It's time for him to establish his own home. But we're also going to see that the Lord is involved here, that Yahweh tells him it's time for you to go home. We're going to see how that transpires, again, some of the details of what happens as Jacob makes his way from the land of Haran and back to the promised land. Reading together here in Genesis chapter 31 and verse number 1. Now Jacob heard that Laban's sons were saying, Jacob has taken all that our fathers or all that was our father's, and has built his wealth from what belonged to our father. And Jacob saw that from Laban's face, that his attitude toward him was not the same as before. And Yahweh said to him, go back to the land of your ancestors and to your family, and I will be with you. Jacob had Rachel and Leah come to the field where his flocks were. He said to them, I can see from your father's face that his attitude towards me is not the same as before, but the God of my father has been with me. You know that with all my strength, I have served your father, and that he has cheated me and changed my wages 10 times. But God has not let him harm me. If he said, the spotted sheep will be your wages, then all the sheep were born spotted. If he said, the streaked sheep will be your wages, then all the sheep were born streaked. God has taken away your father's herds and given them to me. When the flocks were breeding, I saw in a dream that the streaked, spotted, and speckled males were mating with the females. In that dream, the angel of God said to me, Jacob. And I said, here I am. And he said, look up and see, all the males that are mating with the flocks are streaked, spotted, and speckled. For I have seen all that Laban has done to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you poured oil on the stone marker and made a solemn vow to me. Get up, leave this land, and return to your native land. Then Rachel and Leah answered him, do we have any portion or inheritance in our father's family? Are we not regarded by him as outsiders? For he has sold us and has certainly spent our purchase price. In fact, all the wealth that God has taken away from our father belongs to us and to our children. So do whatever God has said to you. So Jacob got up, put his children and wives on the camels. He took all the livestock and possessions he had acquired from Padan Aram, and he drove his herds to go to the land of Canaan, to his father Isaac. When Laban had gone to shear his sheep, Rachel stole her father's household idols, and Jacob deceived Laban, the Aramean, not telling him that he was fleeing. He fled with all his possessions, crossed the Euphrates, and headed for the hill country of Gilead. On the third day, Laban was told that Jacob had fled. So he took his relatives with him, pursued Jacob for 7 days, and overtook him in the hill country of Gilead. But God came to Laban, the Aramean, in a dream at night. Watch yourself, God warned him. Don't say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. When Laban overtook Jacob, Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country, and Laban and his relatives also pitched their tents in the hill country of Gilead. Laban said to Jacob, what have you done? You have deceived me and taken my daughters away like prisoners of war. Why did you flee secretly from me, deceive me, and not tell me? I would have sent you away with joy and singing, with tambourines and lyres, but you didn't even let me kiss my grandchildren and my daughters. You have acted foolishly. I could do you great harm. But last night, the God of your father said to me, watch yourself. Don't say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. Now you have gone off because you long for your father's family. But why have you stolen my gods? Jacob answered, I was afraid for I thought you would take your daughters from me by force. If you find your gods with anyone here, he will not live. Before our relatives, point out anything that is yours and take it. Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen the idols. So Laban went into Jacob's tent, Leah's tent, and the tent of the two concubines, but he found nothing. When he left Leah's tent, he went into Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken Laban's household idols, put them in the saddlebag of the camel, and sat on them. Jacob searched the whole tent, but found nothing. She said to her father, "Don't be angry with me, my lord, that I cannot stand in your presence. I'm having my period." So Laban searched, but could not find the household idols. Then Jacob became incensed and brought charges against Laban. "What is my crime?" he said to Laban. "What is my sin that you have pursued me? You searched all my possessions. Have you found anything of yours? Put it here before my relatives and yours, and let them decide between the two of us. I've been with you these 20 years. Your ewes and female goats have not miscarried, and I've not eaten the rams from your flock. I did not bring you any of the flock torn by wild beasts. I myself bore the loss. You demanded payment from me for what was stolen by day or by night. There I was. The heat consumed me by day, and the frost by night, and sleep fled from my eyes. For 20 years in your household I served you, 14 years for your two daughters, and 6 years for your flocks, and you have changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, the fear of Isaac had not been with me, certainly now you would have sent me off empty-handed. But God has seen my affliction and my hard work, and he has issued this verdict last night." And Laban said to Jacob, "The daughters are my daughters, the children my children, and the flocks my flocks. Everything you see is mine. But what can I do today for these daughters of mine, or for the children they have born? Come now, let's make a covenant, you and I. Let it be a witness between the two of us." So Jacob picked up a stone and set it up as a marker. And then Jacob said to his relatives, "Gather stones." And they took stones and made a mound. Then they ate there by the mound. Laban named the mound Jegar Sahadatha, but Jacob named it Galeed or Galeed. Then Jacob said, "This mound is a witness between you and me today." Therefore the place was called Galeed, and also Mizpah, for he said, "May Yahweh watch between you and me when we are out of each other's sight. If you mistreat my daughters or take other wives, though no one is with us, understand that God will be a witness between you and me." And Laban also said to Jacob, "Look at this mound and the marker I have set up between you and me. This mound is a witness, and the marker is a witness that I will not pass beyond this mound to you, and you will not pass beyond this mound and this marker to do me harm. The God of Abraham, the gods of Nahor, the gods of their father will judge between us." Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac. Then Jacob offered a sacrifice on the mountain and invited his relatives to eat a meal. So they ate a meal and spent the night on the mountain. Laban got up early in the morning, kissed his grandchildren and daughters, and blessed them. Then Laban left to return home. That is Genesis chapter 31. The chapter starts off with Jacob just realizing that it's time to leave town. It's time to take off to go back to where he's from and to establish his own household for himself. Again, he hears the sons of Laban acting as if Jacob has done something wrong, and they are counting Jacob's behavior as wrongdoing toward Laban. There's animosity in their minds toward Jacob. And so this is part of the reason for the sudden departure. On top of that, of course, being the fact that Yahweh has come to him and said, "Hey, it's time for you to go back. And when you go back, I will be with you." Jacob calls Rachel and Leah out to the fields where he is. He wants to be able to talk with them, it seems, with a great deal of privacy, maybe get them going in the direction they're already supposed to go. He says it's time for us to go. He feels the need to be sneaky. That's very interesting. I don't think that is something that is necessary. It wasn't necessary for him to be sneaky. Again, the Lord was going to be with him. If he would have been upfront with Laban, I have great confidence that Yahweh would have protected him here in this moment. But for him, at least toward his wives, he wants to make sure that they understand that they're leaving for a reason. That they recognize that Laban has not been fair toward Jacob. he wants to, I think, ensure their loyalty and that they will actually go with him, because this struggle has been between Laban and Jacob. Laban, the oppressive master, and Jacob, this indentured slave. And yet the end result has been that Jacob wins because God has been with him. Again, God has not let him harm me. He lays down these things. I've served your father well, but he's cheated me. He's changed my wages. God hasn't let him harm me. Whatever he says, God's influence was there, helping me to overcome him and to outlast him. Yahweh is the one who has done this. God has taken away your father's herds and given them to me. Not all of them, but he has certainly multiplied what Jacob has had and has made him mightier, it seems, at least from the asset perspective, mightier than Laban. At least that's the indication I get. Of course, I could be wrong in that. Again, just recognizing that it's all about God. God is the one really dictating everything that has happened, and he is the one who's dictating everything going forward. Remember, Jacob had made that promise back at Bethel that Yahweh would be his God and that he would serve him, and he is seemingly at this point acting good on that promise, although again acting in a sneaky, deceptive way, which when I don't think that was exactly necessary. Now Rachel and Leah, they hear this and they're like, well, listen, we don't really have anything with our father. Our inheritance that we might have had with him, we don't have. He treats us like outsiders. The dowry that you gave him, he's basically used already, and we haven't got anything from it. So in fact, all the wealth that God has taken from our father belongs to us and to our children. So do whatever God has said to you. What is their focus here? Is their focus monetarily? Is this a statement of faith? I'm just really not sure exactly what their mindset is. I'm going to lean towards, especially Rachel, probably not a very good mindset, since we're going to see her in the next paragraph, stealing the household idols. Why is she doing this? Why is she stealing what many refer to as the teraphim? Well, it could be that she sees the possessor of these idols, as being really the head man of the family. So maybe she's stealing them from her father, and she's going to pass them on to Jacob, so that Jacob can feel as if he is the real, I think the word is the familial patis, something of that nature. That's I think it's a Latin term for the head man within the family. Maybe that's it. Or maybe she's just straight up an idolater. We know for certain she's a thief. She's showing her character again to be sorely lacking. But for Jacob here, this is a major effort, because he has a great deal of a large family at this point. He has a great deal of everything. Again, go back to the end of chapter 30, that the man Jacob became very rich. He had many flocks, female and male slaves, camels and donkeys. He had a lot. So for him to make this move, it took some major efforts. And yet he knew what was going on in the minds of Laban's family. He knew what Yahweh desired. So it's time for them to go. They take off. Well, after they take off, 3 days after they take off, Laban hears about them taking off, and he pursues them for 7 days. The text says that he took his relatives with him, and this is an indication at least that he's trying to intimidate them, if not harm them. The language that is used here to describe what Laban is doing is militaristic in nature. So he is going to pursue Jacob and overtake him and take back what he wants. And yet we see God. He came to Laban, and he's identified here as the Aramaean, again, to differentiate between Laban, the Aramaean, and Jacob, the Hebrew, that these are two different people groups. And he says, watch yourself, Laban. Really think about what you're about to do. Don't say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. Don't go over there trying to influence him to return. And definitely don't say anything against Jacob. Here is Yahweh coming to the defense of his patriarch. And again, we're at the part of the story where we're trying to figure out, well, is Yahweh really the God of Jacob yet? Has Jacob recognized that to this point yet? Really not sure. We're getting some inklings that's the case. We're getting some inklings that it's not. But regardless, God himself is faithful, and he takes a stand here for Jacob. Laban eventually does overtake Jacob in the hill country of Gilead, and he comes down on Jacob. He says, this is verse number 26 of Genesis 31. What have you done? You have deceived me. You've taken my daughters. You've done this secretly. He comes here and shows what I believe to be very false fatherly concern. And he tries to say, if you want to leave, I would have let you leave, and we'd have had a big party for you, which again, there's zero indication that would have been the case, because Jacob's trying to leave already. And every time he tries to leave, Laban just is conniving and tricky and does something to make him stay. He says, I could have done great harm to you, but your God came, and he retells what God had done for him in defending Jacob. And he also throws in this thing, you didn't even let me kiss my grandchildren or my daughters. Again, this is just absolutely, he's just blowing smoke. This is absolute fake concern. But then he drops this nugget in verse 30. Why have you stolen my gods? I don't believe Jacob knew anything about this, which is why he says what he says. If he knew that Rachel was the one who taken this, the one that he favors, he definitely would not have said, whoever you find these idols with will be put to death. So I don't think he sees this at all. So Jacob goes and searches, looks through all the tents, come to Rachel's tent again. She's sitting on top of the idols as they're in the carrying bag, and she uses and she says that it is, I'm having my period at a certain time of the month. The reason why she can't stand, maybe she was, maybe she wasn't. We don't know. Maybe that's just a coincidence. Maybe it's an absolute lie. From our perspective toward Rachel, wouldn't be surprised if it was a lie. She's a deceiver. She's very much Laban's daughter, it seems. And he ends up going back. Whenever he gets back to Jacob, though, Jacob's had enough. I think there are 20 years there in this moment. There's 20 years of pent-up frustration that Jacob has been feeling, and he's ready to let it go on Laban. He really for the first time, it seems, he really stands up for himself. He says, I've been with you for these 20 years. I've taken care of you. I've done everything you wanted me to do. I've suffered all the losses of your livestock. You changed my wages. You've done all these things. I've worked hard for you. I was hot during the day. I was cold at night. I did all this. And all this. And you know what? If God hadn't been with me, I would have nothing right now. If he hadn't understood up for me, you would overtake me. You would make me feel like I had done something wrong, and you would have left me empty-handed. But here's the thing. God has seen, this is such a strong statement, but God has seen my affliction and my hard work, and he has issued his verdict last night. He has made the judgment, Laban, between me and you, and he is judged in my favor. Very strong language here. Laban is still, he is so self-unaware. He is so arrogant. One last attempt where he says, the daughters are my daughters, the sons my sons, the flock's my flock. Everything you see, you think that he's getting ready to really take a last stand, but I think there's just one last-ditch effort just to show some bravado. And then he says, well, let's just make a covenant. Let's make a covenant. Well, we know why, because he knows Jacob's right. That God has been with him. And that if God really wanted Jacob to overcome Laban, then he very much could do so. Jacob, we see again the motif of stones showing up here again. He makes some stones and makes this memorial there. And they make this covenant. Laban does a lot of talking. You're going to watch my daughters. You're going to take care of them and all this. And if you don't, then God's going to be the one that judges you. And he says covenant is between the God of Abraham and also the gods of Nahor, which have all this, again, covenant language here. At the end of it, they have a meal. And then that, again, signifies the unity here of this covenant. Then in the morning, he gets up, verse 55, kisses the grandchildren, kisses his daughters, blesses all them, and then returns home. No kissing, no blessing for Jacob, which again is a reversal of what we see back in chapter 29 of verse 13. Whenever Laban first meets Jacob, it's called kissing on him, loving on him, speaking really kindly to him. By the end of it, though, that's been completely reversed. Why? Well, because Laban realizes that Jacob, he can't manipulate him anymore. He cannot control him anymore. And Laban's that type of person. If he can't control you, well, he doesn't have much use for you. And that concludes the interaction between Jacob and Laban. Jacob certainly has come out on top, and that is because God has been with him. I want to take just a moment, just think about Laban's character. The manipulator that he is, the deceiver that he is. Laban does something called gaslighting, where he tries to feed you this idea for so long and making you think that it's true, when in reality that it's not. Deceptive. He's manipulative. He distorts truth. He makes you feel like you're nothing, and it makes you feel like whenever you stand up for yourself, you're the one that's in the wrong. Friends, these type of people, if they're those type of people in our lives, we need to get away from them. If you have a Laban in your life who is manipulative, who gaslights you, who lies to you and distorts the truth, you need to get those type of people out of your lives. They are not helpful. They are not healthy. They will only cause you harm and pain. Now, again, Jacob's kind of brought a little bit of this upon himself, because he's been the deceiver himself. I don't think he's been up to Laban's degree of such, but that's still the type of person that Jacob was. He's making strides. He seems to be making changes. He's trying to be more honest. Again, I don't think he had to sneak away deceptively. I think God would have taken care of him. No, I don't think Laban would just let him go like he says, but God would have provided for him nonetheless. But here still, the point remains, we don't need Labans in our lives. We don't need those type of people because they just cause trouble. You know what? They produce more Labans. Again, look at Rachel. Rachel is the daughter of her father. Same type of person, same type of negative character. And we just don't need those people in our lives. And what that means as well is we don't need to be that type of person. We need to be people of honesty, people of integrity, people of compassion and concern for others. Life's not all about us. We need to care for others and treat them right and do right by them. And we will have a much happier life if we will live that type of way. I appreciate so much you tuning in for this reading on this Thursday. Tomorrow we got a double read in chapter 32 and chapter 33, right at about 52 verses, I think. So right about the same length of the text today. But there's a lot of important stuff that's going on tomorrow. There's some wrestling with God, and then there's going to be the meeting between Jacob and Esau coming up as well. So lots to discuss tomorrow. Looking forward to reading that with you then. Thanks so much for tuning in. Have a great rest of your Thursday, everyone. We'll see you in the morning. Take care and God bless.